Welcome back to the Entrepreneurship Center. My name is Desmond, one of the managers here, and in this video we're going to learn how to close a sales transaction off of the lifetime value of the purchase. There are two components in that title. There's the closing and then there's the lifetime value. So we're going to go over each right now. Closing a transaction is when the exchange occurs. It's when you ask someone this simple question: how would you like to pay today? Visa, MasterCard, Discover, or Union Pay, or wire transfer, or ACH, or whatever that is. When that exchange happens and you give your product or service and they give you the money, that's the close, right? But in addition to that, and what will complement and support driving that close, especially when you run out of other options, can be the lifetime value comparison, right? So a lot of people use this when they're making big purchases. They actually use this to not make a purchase, or, well, actually, I guess the inverse of that is to make a purchase. It's something called the TCO, the total cost of ownership. When people buy homes or when they buy cars, they actually do these comparisons. At least some people do anyway, not everyone. I know I don't always do it. Sometimes I just like what I like and I'm going in for that. But for the really informed buyer and the buyer that is really cost conscious, even if they have the money, but they're still cost conscious, they're normally going to use the TCO. Now, before we get into all the details, I want you to not understand, but I want you to be able to identify when someone is talking about lifetime value, even if like you're at a networking event or if you're in a business seminar and someone says this acronym right here, LTV. LTV basically stands and is the acronym for lifetime value. And again, the basic definition of lifetime value is the total value generated as a result of the purchase. Now, there are normally two scenarios in which you'll want to use this close. Number one is the scenario in which you have a lack of affordability. Let's say you're selling printers from Xerox, right? I mean, I know those things are like dying, but I know back in, even now, to be honest, but I know like in the late 90s and stuff, I used to know salespeople that were, older than me. I just asked, hey, what do you do? I sell printers or I sell office machinery, right? And these were like big purchases that are like $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 purchases, right? And then they have ongoing costs going with them. Their biggest objection was really like the affordability. Like, hey, it's not my budget. I can't afford it. It's too expensive. It's too much at one time, right? So there's a few ways to solve that problem. I mean, one of the ways to solve that problem, if someone really wants what you have, but the amount is just too much, it can't fit through the door of the budget, right? Then what you do is you just finance it. You just break it down over a series of 30, 40, 50 installments. And then now what was this is now this and can kind of go smoothly into their budget. But let's say either you can't finance something, or let's just talk about the monthly installment after it's financed. Let's say that is too big for people. This is where the lifetime value really shows its magic. Now, before we get into how to use it, I want you to also understand the other scenario. The other scenario here is the similarity. Let's say you're selling a product or a service that looks so similar to your competitor that they can't really tell the difference. The good thing is that the prospect is in the market, they want to buy. How do you start showing the differentiation? Well, sometimes if you look the same and you do the same and have the same outcome, the only way to do it is from a financial monetary standpoint. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But in summary, the scenarios that will trigger you to use this close are either going to be affordability or similarity. So let's talk about the two ways that you can approach or use this close based on your scenario. You can either sell on the lifetime savings value, or you can sell on the lifetime yield value. Now, most people are trained to say, hey, if you buy this, then you're going to get this in return. But a lot of people don't know how to articulate the savings the same way that they would a yield. We're going to go through that actually right now. So in scenario number one, let's say you've got a prospect in the marketplace looking for a vehicle that costs $40,000, and they want Bluetooth streaming, they want leather seats, they want a sedan, they want all these things. And let's say they have two options. Let's say they're looking either for a Cadillac, or let's say they're looking for a Tesla. And let's say you're the salesperson at Tesla, right? Let's say everything is exactly similar in terms of feature set, outcome, and just the way it looks and the cool factors there on both, right? Well, let's say that, it's there, but, they kind of like know Cadillac. Cadillacs have been around longer. Let's say that they're going to, kind of wander off across the street and buy that car because it's a brand they know. It's a brand that their parents knew, right? Let's say they do that. And let's say you sense that. Well, how do you save them in a professional manner without walking across the street and making that purchase for a brand and purely off brand purposes, right? Here's what you'll do. You'll actually start to use the lifetime value savings close, but you must understand what you're dealing with. So the first thing you want to understand is, who is my competitor and what do they offer and where are we different, right? Let's say everything's the same. Then what you must understand is you must understand the total cost of ownership of that purchase. And you must understand the total cost of ownership of the purchase of your competitor that they're going to make or with you. And then what you have to do is you have to identify, okay, what are the areas that I can control or that I can show such a disparity in savings that they will go with me and not with my customer? Well, let's break down a total cost of ownership for a vehicle. The first is the actual cost of the vehicle, whether it's all the money paid up front or whether it's finance. If it's finance, it's the monthly payments. Now, normally people want to protect the things that they use or own, so then you have to tack on insurance. And by the way, if you have a vehicle, at least in the United States, it's mandatory to at least have basic coverage. Now, let's talk about maintenance. You know, some vehicles are significantly more costly on the maintenance side of things than others, right? And that's a way oftentimes that salespeople, especially in the car industry, actually close, because they're like, look, the lifetime value of your maintenance is going to be much greater with my competitor versus with this car. That's a fantastic way to close. But the one I really want to focus on that we can really narrow in and really start to show a major savings gap is actually the cost of gasoline. I'm not sure if you know this, but the average U.S. citizen uses about $2,000 or spends about $2,000 per year on gasoline, which is about $170 per month on a traditional, combustion motor vehicle, the vehicles that we've known since we were little, right? But on an electrical vehicle, I found out that the average customer is only spending about $500 to $550 in energy costs. So as you can see, there's a big, almost 75% discount from the $2,000 to the $500 or $550. But guess what? You want to make this disparity so big that it is undisputable. So all they have to do is talk themselves into the close and go to your office and sign the paperwork. Here's how you do that. Instead of doing anything else, you must stretch the timeline, and you must multiply those installments of the timeline to come up with an aggregate number. So here's how you do that. Instead of looking at $2,000 a year or $550 a year, let's look at 5 years, right? What is 2,000 over 5 years? That's $10,000. What is 550 over 5 years? That is $2,750. And you want to end with a closing statement like this. Ma'am or sir, would you agree that the extra $7,500 you save by going with this vehicle and gasoline costs versus that vehicle would be better spent or better resided in your pocket, allocated for what you want to use it for, versus being burnt in your gas tank? Would you agree or would you disagree? Most people are going to agree with you. All you have to do is, once you gain the agreement, all you have to do is then ask, how would you like to pay today? Would you like to finance or would you like to buy in cash, and take them to your office, and that deal is over with, right? Now, that's how you sell and close a transaction on the lifetime savings value. But what if you wanted to close a transaction on the lifetime yield value? Let's look at this investment property example. Let's say I'm a real estate agent, and let's say someone's in the market to purchase a second home for investment purposes. Their objective is to make money on top of the money that they're investing, right? They're not looking to save, because if they were looking to save, they wouldn't buy the investment property or a second home to begin with. So their objective is, what yield do I get? How can this contribute to my bottom line income? How does this increase it? So you must understand that as a real estate agent. So if someone comes to me and they say, hey Desmond, I'm looking to buy a second investment home, and I'm looking to buy in this area because I think it's good. But the number one thing that we must do is we must stay with, if they're not buying it cash, by the way, the number one thing we must do is stay at a maximum mortgage payment of $700 a month. So what we start doing is we start going and looking at places where we know we can get a $700 a month mortgage payment. But what happens if we find that diamond in the rough, or that jewel, or that neighborhood that is so irresistible, but it's more expensive? What happens if we find a place that has a great neighborhood, that is extremely safe, that has a higher level of overall income, that has greater access to parks and grocery stores, right? I mean, think about that. Wouldn't you see that as being more valuable if you were a renter individually, or especially if you had a family? You absolutely would. So if you would, that means the market would as well. And the person who owns that rental home could stand the chance of being able to get a higher yield from a higher level of investment, from $700 to $900 a month, for example, versus just sticking with that $700. Now, some people, that is the top of their threshold, whatever they came to you with. But some people actually kind of start low and go high. So you may be able to really graduate them from $700 to $900 a month on this one thing alone. Let's say on that $700 a month mortgage, they were only able to charge $1,100 in rent to their renter. Well, their yield is $400 in gross profit per month. But what if they were able to spend $900 on that monthly mortgage payment, but be able to receive a $1,700 per month rent payment? Let's say they were in a very nice place like in Alpharetta, or if they were in Herndon, or if they were in Westchester, in outside of Los Angeles. These are places where people are spending money. They're safe neighborhoods, and the perceived value is higher than maybe the market of this $700 mortgage. What if instead of $400 they could bring home in gross profit, they could charge $1,700, and the gap between 9 and 17 is $800, right? As long as you believe that, and you really believe that they could do it, right? Because we're not trying to push things on people that they cannot achieve. But if you really think they could do it, then what I would do is I would go to Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. I would say, hey, look, I understand that your budget is $700. I know that you're trying to maximize your yield. I know that you can make $400 in gross profit per month here, but I've identified something. If we can go with this particular property and you can just tack on an extra 6 to 12 months for an extra $200 a month at spend, I really think we can get you a higher class renter that's willing to spend more money, that is less volatile, that's going to be there for a year, 2 or 3 years, which adds to the level of dependability for the income that you want. I think we can do that here. And then they'll be like, show me how. Well, you just show them, hey, I can make 400 there, or I can potentially make 800 here. Even if it's 400 or 500, yeah, they're spending a little bit more, but they still have that upside, right? They may not get that on the first renter, but maybe if they get that on the second or the third renter, now we're going back into the lifetime value generated, right? And that's where the true magic of lifetime value is. Don't make it about right now. Don't make it about what is my budget. Make it about what am I getting across the lifetime of this purchase. So in summary, lifetime value is the total value generated. Normally, it's going to be triggered by a lack of affordability of what you're selling, or the similarity of what you're selling to the competitors that your prospect is looking at. There's 2 ways you can do it. You can sell on the savings, or you can sell on the yield. And don't ever forget, LTV is the acronym for lifetime value, just in case you're somewhere and you don't remember. And then always remember my vehicle example, right, where someone's comparing a regular vehicle as we know today versus an electric vehicle. Close on the gasoline savings. But here, close on the yield of the higher value renter that's going to bring more capital, more money in on a monthly basis for a longer period of time to you as the person who is procuring that second investment rental home. My name is Desmond. Thank you so much for joining us today on how to close a sales transaction on the lifetime value, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon in future videos.